Okay, how are you, Paula?
Hi, this is Paula, Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. This is an introductory show to a week that I'm going to be doing dealing with the very difficult topic of how we heal. And what I'm particularly interested in is healing of the most profound type, which means it has to address the most profound kinds of abuse. I had originally started my search in this area of pedophilia or sexual abuse of children when it came to my attention at the Ramtha School of Enlightenment. An ex-sex slave was speaking about her experiences, and it was so incredulous. And at the same time, I, right after her talk, got to hear J.Z. Knight channeling an ascended being, a master who lived on this plane 35,000 years ago. Now, it seems so unbelievable. And yet, it started to make more sense about why the society is like the way it is. By that evening, I managed also to encounter a miracle master from India. All of this happened in one day. Now, it was a type of initiation to be aware of this type of abuse going on, to hear from paranormal dimensions that our minds needed to be open to be able to comprehend that the problems exist. And then once our minds are open and we recognize that there's a problem, then we can start to be in a better position to find the solution. When I came back to New York, I ran into my esteemed guest here, which is Frank Craven. And Frank, you were the first one who joined me on a show that we had in August of 2000 called Sex Slavery in the White House, where Frank had firsthand experience having met Cathy O'Brien. And
well, not with sexual slavery, thank you.
I know, but
with Cathy herself,
you knew her story.
Cathy O'Brien was a sex slave, presidential model who was abused by Dick Cheney and Gerald Ford and
right.
And Reagan.
And we did a call-in show at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I had been to India maybe once, and I'd seen Swami Kaleshwar at the ashram, and I came back, and we did the show together, and it was a rather scary experience, really, to get on camera and to talk about this really gruesome topic. But when I listened to it many years later, the callers were mature. You know, there was only one that, you know, might have been slightly titillated by the topic. Everybody was giving us good questions.
Right.
But still, it's a topic that I never quite knew how to really approach properly, because you're getting into people's proclivities and appetites, and you don't want to be judgmental, but at the same time, when it comes to children, you want to say that we need to have a framework, a spirituality, a religion, a dharma that can protect the children, because they're our hope for the future.
Right.
So I want to thank you for joining me again.
My pleasure. Good to see you, Paula.
Yes.
Always an honor and a pleasure to be with you.
Yes.
And you always, like myself, attempt to do intelligent programming instead of commercial schlock. And this topic is very heavy and hits the raw nerve of America, because there's so many abducted and missing children, many of them from these satanic cults and sexual slavery that happens, as reported by Ted Gunderson, who was an FBI bureau chief investigating missing children and uncovered a lot of satanic cults. And maybe at some point, if you want, I have an unedited version of a film about Boys Town that was supposed to be aired on the History Channel, but then got pulled at the last moment, about how the kids, a lot of the boys were rented out to the local congressmen or senators.
Right.
These people are on their
Boys
power
Town
trips.
In Omaha, Nebraska?
I forget where, somewhere in the Midwest.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a famous Boys Town that Spencer Tracy had made famous.
Right.
I mean, supposedly it's cleaned up as a good rap, but this was like during the 80s when, you know, some elder guys came out and talked about their story, and investigative reporters went in and found out that indeed boys are being rented out, like as we found out with Senator Tom Foley and or was it Congressman Foley?
I know Webster Tarpley's talked about it, but what I want to do on this show is see if we can kind of shift in a different direction.
Okay.
So, are we ready to do a roll-in in the control room?
Yeah, I think
Okay,
the
if you
cassette
just
thing, the
yeah,
cassette tape?
if you just hit that, just wait a moment.
All right.
I'll introduce it. I will, if I haven't, I'm not exactly sure when I'm gonna put this show on my week of pedophilia to address it, but I put on, and I've had interviews, and Alan has had interviews with somebody who was sexually abused or blessed by a big guru in India.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be accused of guru bashing, and I'm not guru bashing, because
But
I
if
think this
the
is.
guru is a sex fiend and is taking advantage of minors, that's a crime.
I understand, but I still want to get to solution. So what I want to do is, can we have that roll-in of Swami Kaleshwar talking about how we approach people who we feel could do things in a better way?
Okay.
And yeah.
Here comes the rolling.
If you're mentioning somebody weak points, that's not your business. He's also one level equal to you. He's also good ability. He is sucking millions of people. He has good attraction, name and fame, much popularity.
No, that's what I'm
his
saying.
karma, whatever he's talking. Fine. If you are open to him, when you see him personally, maybe it's wrong to you if you start to talk. You can talk to him privately. Hey, maybe this is my feeling, don't misunderstand. If you are mentioning it like a publicly, hey, he did this, he did this, he did this, what is your greatness there? You are the biggest stupid there. He is commenting something, you will also comment something. Two big stupids fighting each other. There is no more God. There is no more spirituality. There is no more happiness. There is no more fragrance. There's a dirty fragrance is growing there. Unnecessarily it's throwing on the millions of people. Innocent people, they are receiving it. There are two people, they are doing big crime there. Why I am saying this? We have to develop such abilities to simply accept the truth. Even though if you know it's not truth, but you have to see the right time, right moment to say, to explain the process. Is it true or not? You have to choose the time, using your sense of humor. That's very important. If you have no sense of humor, even though you are so powerful man, you have huge destroy in your life. One day it will bite you. If there is no more life to you. This is especially very, very important in spiritual successful lives. Why the spiritual successful life people that are getting failure means because of these reasons. They never use it with their sense of humor in right times.
Swami Kaleshwar was talking about there, because he's a young miracle master, and I thought when Cathy O'Brien was saying to go to the congressman to get them to release the records that were used, that showed which words were used when they were hypnotized, to put them under mind control, that these records are locked for reasons of national security, and thus these people have their human rights taken away. And I thought that these senators are not going to want that to happen because they might be very compromised once people regain their full memory. So I thought that somebody who understood how Jesus was healing and really could do the miracles might have a key, and that's why I went to India. Now that particular roll-in, he's talking about finding the right time to address a problem to somebody.
Yes.
However, the reason I am going on camera and I am putting these tapes out on my show is that you don't get audiences very easily with people about these situations. You don't get them, period. And yet to then, when you do have an audience, it's very difficult to say, stop sexually abusing children. Now, the Catholic Church went through a lot of this, and I understand it came out after 9/11. There was a huge flurry of all of this. And I'm thinking that there should be a more efficient way to have people relaxed enough that they can come up, fess up to whatever their addiction might be, whether it's children or or raiding the pantry in terms of the no-bid contracts and things like that, that we have to approach it in a very wise way.
Well, you know, if you're dealing with a major problem, which is denial. Most people do not want to fess up. We live in denial of our divinity, of our spirituality, and especially of our sins, of which we are guilty. And living with shame is sort of the human condition, though. Part of the process of liberation and ascension is to liberate your shame on a cellular level for being alive. And you stand naked, as do the sadhus that are now jumping in the Ganges rivers, and anyone who's truly open. Like the Bible says, you must be innocent to walk into heaven. As a child is innocent and doesn't feel guilty about being naked and being open. So people, especially as we grow older, we have this inherent baggage of fear of fessing up to any stupid little thing we might have done or been engaged with or partied with or even observed inadvertently. And suddenly it gets clouded and compartmentalized. And think about Cathy O'Brien, who was a sex slave in the White House, and others. They weren't just mind controlled, they were brutalized, they were traumatized, they were beaten on a regular basis to decompartmentalize their brain and thinking so that they would obey orders automatically, and they would ferry drugs back and forth and sexual favors as a state, but never marijuana, because that makes you think and it opens you up. The cocaine and any other drug was fine. And these people have a lot of stuff. Now, Cathy liberated herself was, thank God, that Mark Phillips rescued her, and they took her to Alaska, and she was alone, and through writing was able to have the catharsis of purging all her story and then face it alone. And writing is a very beautiful therapy to get out anything, to work with spirit and work with your higher self and just write, and it'll come out. The writing will come.
But not for her daughter. That's why she needed the congressman to release the records, because her daughter was programmed in a more sophisticated way. Right?
Yeah, and sophisticated, more brutal way, with her clitoris and her body and her nerve systems and her bone structure and her brain and everything. She was totally experimented. It's an ongoing experiment of how they can manipulate people and control people's minds and have them do, as I say, because that's the commander's dream. Basically, the victimizers are on a power trip. They want to have power over people. And instead of accessing spirituality and God and working with their own power and thus being able to gain authentic respect, they demand respect. And this is what dictators and military men do, by force and violence. And so the sophisticated techniques in torture.
What do you think we as spiritual people need to do, though? Because, see, this is why I wanted to seek the blessings, the guidance, the knowledge. I felt I needed more knowledge. And if somebody was serious about Jesus doing the healings, I felt, here's a place where you need a type of healing that, so far as I could tell, nothing in our society could address.
Well, the beauty of Jesus and all of great gurus and masters in God Almighty is that it's ever present, and healing is available, and love is available always. The well is there to drink from. You and I, with appetites to see the sunrise and know God, drink from this well, and we are replenished and nourished and expand. People like Cheney and Bush and people that are power tripping say no, thank you, but no thank you. They're not going there.
But what if you had a chance?
And even if you give them, say, oh, this is a golden ticket, it's great, it's easy, it's no problem. They say, excuse me, no, get out of here, arrest that guy.
No, but what if you had a chance to talk to a Dick Cheney? Because I understood he was the cruelest.
Right.
Kathy talked about that. This was years ago, before people even hardly knew who Dick Cheney was. I mean, her story goes
even
back
if you pay him. He's a multi-billionaire now through graft and corruption.
No,
you can't even pay him to get his attention.
But see, here's why I so much want to connect with divine knowledge, or something where you're so spiritually confident, you're so solid that you would be a fountain and you could even share it, and you could sort of stop this tidal wave where there's so much corruption and so much that people have to hide. They're even more adamant. It's like Webster Tarpley calls a flight forward. You're screwing up in the battle, but instead of retreating, you go forward.
Yeah, well,
so
God bless you, Paula. And you could walk on water and be a living miracle worker that is proving miracles in the Western world and doing great things and be very enlightened and levitate during your meditations. Dick Cheney's not going to raise an eyebrow and give you the time of day.
No, I'm
He
saying,
doesn't want to go there. People that live in this paradigm of violence and torture and greedy malfeasance are not interested in enlightened people. Oh, yeah, it's like a circus act. Okay, fine, no problem. They'll look at the lead popcorn and watch it, very amusing. And they'll move on because they're stuck in their little four corners, and you can't even if you manifest a miracle, you demonstrate great powers, and you could do healing, and God works with you very clearly. These people are, see, we're all born with free will. God isn't a dictatorship. God is ever present and manifest from every insect, every blade of grass, every whale. Every human being has the blessings of the Almighty Creator, and it's the individual spiritual journey for every individual to find God and enlightenment their way. And no one religion is necessarily the way, although every religion likes to make you think this is the way. And that's why it is narrowing to be addicted to a religion, although it's a good discipline, and it's important to follow discipline to get to where you want to go. But basically, their religion is money, it's power, they're no ego, and that's a contradiction of terms. It's a short circuit. So I'm not saying that we can't enlighten them and they will bring peace and love to the planet and healing and stop being abusive to innocent people, but it's a long road to hoe, and God is certainly in our corner, but God is the gracious enough to allow and tolerate all beings to experiment the separation from God. That's what we're doing here in the third dimension. We're separated from, we're trying on the separation from God. We're really human beings, which means we're divine energy, but we're in a physical package that is experimenting with separation of God, living in limitation. And so people that are really into power maintain that power at all costs.
but what do you give to the viewer, like with that role in Swami Kaleshwar was talking about a big guru in India, and so you shake people's confidence, and I know the Catholic Church has already gone through this, you know, because of all the pedophilia and the abuses and the lawsuits and the litigation and everything. But it really does break your heart when you have to give somebody some bad news, that fearless leader is not much of a leader and not very fearless. And then when you give them that bad news, it seems you have to be prepared then to sort of shore it up, to say, hey, it's okay, we can still get through this. You don't want to just shock people,
Right.
but also indicate that healing's there. That's why I took you out to the sunrise one morning and say, this is what I need to do.
Right.
You know, watch that sun come up, see this orb of just pure generosity. It's just giving and giving and giving. And now there's, you know, a wonderful, I don't know what you'd say, presence, leader, focus. You go, if someday I could be as all giving as the sun, just to radiate, because what's the sun going to get in return? How are you going to make some backroom deal with the sun? You know, if you give me this, I'll give you that.
When you salute it, it salutes back. It's action, reaction. There's certainly always a cause and effect in life. And with due respect to your belief in service and time and ashrams of gurus, I personally have to back off from that, because guru is an ego trip, and I pity gurus that have lots of devotees and gopis around them. Yes, we must have master teachers, but the most enlightened and most powerful ones are very humble, almost hermit-like, and do have a few followers, but when you go around giving darshan the way Sai Baba does, and there's thousands of people throwing rose petals at their feet, and they're walking around like King of Siam, this gets caught up in the ego. Even if you can manifest vibhuti or this or that, when you get into your guru identity, which is fine, it's not a bad thing, it's just simply not purely enlightened thing and in touch with that higher self that is beyond ego identity.
But what about our egos? Here we are with a public access television show telling people something.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have to step up to the plate about that too.
Well, I'm not saying that ego is bad. I'm just saying to get caught up with the ego is bad. I like my name and identity, but although usually I'm behind the camera with my show, which airs 9:30, Channel 34, Friday nights. It's called What's Ailing Healing America. I've been on for 8 years, and I love it. But it's mostly, I do it out of service. I want to hear other people's story and put out a public access show that's non-commercial and interesting.
And you have it balanced, but it's ailing and healing.
Right.
Ailing and healing.
That's the
so
idea.
You're not just looking at the wrongdoing.
Right,
You're
you can
also
complain,
looking at
but
the
you got to
goodness.
offer a solution. In
Right.
nature, every poisonous plant has an antidote nearby.
Right.
And there's a solution to every problem.
So you're now on every Friday at
Channel 34 at 9:30 at night.
Channel 34 at 9:30 at night. That's a wonderful time.
Yeah, what's ailing, healing America has always seemed to me to be the correct title. I originally started producing What's Ailing America as a New York resident with Dr. Rebecca Carley, who was a surgeon who was into alternative healing modalities, and she subsequently got fired and lost her AMA license because the pharmaceutical lobby is a big mafia that wants you to use their stuff, and anything that's alternative usually is free, or it's like prana energy, or it's medicine or herbs. I go in my backyard, I can get garlic mustard, start chewing that. It's a great cancer fighter, you know, burdock root, pull up the weeds. Next thing you know, I start eating them, and I'm healthy as can be, you know.
But I think you had good genes to start with, right? You may
well,
not
maybe,
have
yeah.
tackled
Everyone
some of
has the
these
cancer
problems.
gene, and what happens is the cancer is sort of like a cell that's run amok. It's like a selfish guy. He eats everything. He monopolizes the conversation. He's just a selfish little cell that is going crazy, and it gets fed and more, and our own psychology sort of gives permission for the breakdown to happen. We either are building up or breaking down, and constantly there's a balancing act going on at all times. But let's not start straight from this topic and get back to the how do we heal sexual abuse and stop it if possible.
Right. Well, I think first of all you have to understand what sexual energies are. So
every man's looking forward to understanding that. Women are guilty of that too. That's understanding sexual energy is
a lot of times people think,
topic.
But a lot of times people think, sexual healing is somebody who's waving your hands, and it's just sort of a wimpy, airy-fairy thing. But it's something that should be as radical, as strong, as powerful as sexual energy. It's that real. If you take a person on the last stages of cancer, or you know, the miraculous things that you hear about, or God knows, raising the dead. I mean, I know that's not believed in a lot of circles.
No, of course they raise the dead, no problem. In fact, I read this summer a book called The Sex Magic of Isis, tracing back about 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, and that's how Mary Magdalene was trained. And she was prepping for Jesus. She was really Jesus's wife and mate, and that wedding of turning the water into wine was their wedding. And what it is that male-female bonding is necessary and healthy because it builds the Ka body, or the astral body. Everyone has a spirit body. We have a physical body that we see in our five senses, but in our sixth sense, which we all are entitled to have, and we do have if we just give ourselves permission to have it, is the spirit body. And to build up the power of the spirit body so that Jesus, Lord Yeshua ben Yosef Bar David, could trailblaze a pathway. You see, because Moses brought the law of God into effect, and then the Lord Jesus brought grace. Now the Jews reject him because he said you don't have to read or write, you just practice the energy of love and vibrate that frequency. You don't have to go to synagogue. So the Jews said, what? You don't have a synagogue, you have to read, right? What are you, crazy and all? You're not the Messiah. But many Jews do recognize him as the Messiah. It was predicted. And the idea is that he trailblazed the path into the astral for us. So when we die, our light is golden, and just by calling upon the Lord and taking Jesus in, boom, we're connected. I mean, we don't have to go there. I mean, the native people say, you know, the Native Americans, the Indian people say, oh, you know, white man came and took away our spirituality and gave us religion. So whatever. The idea is to connect with the cosmic grid that is the real reality in the cosmic frequency. And what happens is there's a balancing act. Everyone has electromagnetic force field around them. It's the yin-yang balance, or the Indians call it Pingala Anita, or in Sex Magic of Isis of ancient Egypt, it was the black and gold cobra that went up, and like the caduceus of the medical field has those snakes rising. It's the energy field coming in and weaving in and out of our chakras and finding the balance of our negative and positive polarity, our electromagnetic. I'm electric, I'm male, you're magnetic, you're female. So to fornicate is not a bad thing. What is bad is to fornicate selfishly. When you're just having lust for love's sake and you want to get your rocks off, so to speak.
So that's probably what's happening with the politicians.
That's
what
the problem with
the
you know, the vilified prostitution instead of honor it. Because people need to communicate, need to come together. How were we created? We were created by an act of love. Sex is a beautiful thing. It's a natural, it's a blending of the harmonizing of the male and female energies. And what makes it beautiful is when you spend time together and magnetize into each other's frequency field. Some of the most romantic evenings are just spending the night together with a woman or a man and women together without making love, or if they do, but they hold each other closely in the afterglow, or what they like, the foreplay. It's all about blending energy fields. And that's what is lacking in lust, where you just do your own thing and go about your business.
Isn't there a little corner in your heart of compassion for some of the politicians who probably don't have this afterglow experience, where it's just this incredible rush of power and energy and
well, yeah, I have compassion, but that's a selfish act. You know, these people that just want to abuse children.
We should be alert for sure. I mean, my mom said to me, she left a message on my answering machine when 9/11 truth started to really dawn on her how it was really so.
Yeah.
And she said, meditate more, Paula. She goes, you're all alone. You're not around meditators. And then she said, and forgive the guys that did the 911. That would be good. And I remember when I first got the message, I was a little annoyed because I thought, yeah, it's my mom and she's not really into the exciting stuff. But I realized, I really thought there was wisdom in there. But I think to forgive somebody properly, you have to be very savvy and very aware of what they're doing and then why they're doing it. Then your forgiveness means something, and then your forgiveness can be constructive. So I know your shows, or our shows that we did in 2000, it seemed like such a crazy topic, sex slavery in the White House.
Yeah.
And yet today, it's 2007, and it's coming into mainstream
it's
more.
As prevalent as ever. Yeah,
no,
right.
not that it's prevalent, it's that mainstream
Are waking up to it.
Are waking up to it.
Yeah, well, listen,
And
first of all,
we
I have
push-
to disagree with your mother for three reasons. First of all, it's pretentious to forgive. It's not our domain to either forgive or accuse. We as journalistic, investigative reporters should expose the truth and put it out there on public access TV, and as a citizen, we must criticize authority without fear and look into a democracy where the people rule the country, not a dictatorship. And it's up to God to forgive. It's up to their own higher
We only
conscience.
have 1 minute left.
It's up to a person's individual search for clarity to find forgiveness. All we can do is that we should expose this and not pass judgment, but just say, you know what, this is what's going down, folks.
Thank you, Frank, for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining me. I'm Paula, Gloria, and this show has been Farther Down the Rabbit Hole, and we are going to really be stretched to the limit to understand the depths of compassion, of forgiveness, and really of moving into new realities. So thanks again, Frank. And stay tuned for the future shows this week on pedophilia. And we're also going to move into the healthcare thing too, because like Michael Elner said, at least in a concentration camp, you knew you were in a concentration camp. Some of the medicines people are taking because of these fake drug trials
Right.
is producing that same effect.
Look at placebos and how they help.
So I guess, great.